Hey there, have you ever played a match where you felt like you're getting no healing and get picked too quickly? Or the other way, felt like you can't do your job with your chosen hero? Establishing the line of sight and making sure that you are visible to your supports and to your enemies is an important concept in Overwatch. Let's get to the details. Hello guys and welcome to the Dojo. This guide is indeed about making sure that you see your enemies and your supports see you. While it sounds trivial, lots of players don't think about this aspect of the game. And this video is here to help you make a habit of thinking about your positioning while in game. A line of sight is an imaginary line going from the camera to an arbitrary point on the map. We're going to use a simple model for example concepts in this video. There is an in-game setting called field of view that can affect your line of sight. The wider the field of view, the more you can see on your screen. We recommend to keep this value on the highest setting, as you can use the extra information to see enemies that are not visible on lower settings. Information is power. Now that we have the basics down, you're going to ask, what does line of sight have to do with our games? The answer is simple: everything. Aiming is based on line of sight. Most abilities check line of sight before having an impact in the game. You mostly only know about enemies in your line of sight, and we could continue. Here is a list of line of sight based abilities. All primary and secondary fire from every hero, except Winston and Reinhardt, because if your field of view is lower than 90, you'll still hit players that you don't see. Apart from some projectile heroes like Junkrat, Hanzo, Mei, and Torbjorn. Roadhog's Hook, Mei's Ultimate, Zenyatta's Orbs of Discord and Harmony, Sombra's Hack, Soldier's Bionic Field, Zarya's Projected Barrier, Lucio's Auras, and Mercy's Beams. These abilities will only have an effect if you have your line of sight on the target, or you could have your line of sight on them, meaning there are no obstacles in between. So let's discuss the importance of making sure that your team can see you, or so to say, keeping the line of sight with them. When an engage is happening, we tend to forget where we are and concentrate solely on trying to do our job. The best example is when Winston starts an engage with a dive composition, but he jumps too far away. If he lands in a place where the line of sight is broken, he's as good as dead. So you may get into situations where you feel you don't get the necessary support from your team, but if you review the game and pay attention to the details, you may just find that you broke the line of sight somehow, and this made it easy for the enemy team to kill you quickly. A lot of times, players tend to be either too aggressive and die a lot, or too passive and fail to do their job. Most often, you'll be in a team that has both types of players. The aggressive player is going to go down quickly due to the lack of sustain. For example, a Genji who is flanking the enemy team and moves behind walls will not be able to get any heals from an Ana in the team. Therefore, if you're an aggressive type of player, you always need to consider if you're safe to engage where you're planning to do so. Of course, sometimes it is worth the risk to break the line of sight and dive in the enemy team to kill a high priority target like a Mercy. But in most cases, it's better to make sure that everyone sees everyone and avoid situations where the line of sight is broken. You may think that this concept is only useful for supports and DPS characters. Wrong. Imagine a Reinhardt playing in the front line. If he decides to start chasing the enemy team and goes too far ahead or behind a corner, he is breaking the line of sight with the supports, and the enemy team will be able to punish him for this mistake. Hope you get the idea. The takeaway is that you need to be aware of your team's line of sights to be able to combo well and have the biggest impact as a team. You need to keep engages keeping the current composition and the need for continuous line of sight in mind. Don't dive to a place where your healers won't be able to see you. And don't charge under the enemy shield, or the supports won't be able to help you. Let's talk about how to position yourself with different heroes for maximum effectiveness. For supports, you always want to make sure to position behind your team to somewhere safe. Be prepared to move around a bit to be able to see your front line and help them. To do your job, you need to make sure that you can see all friendlies who may need help. If your team is tearing apart and running around headlessly, you won't be able to support them. It's good to tell them this and call it out in the team chat. Ask them to stay together a bit more and always make sure that they're not engaging in blind spots. This can help your overall presence in the game, as you'll have more buddies to support. For frontliners and off-tanks, you always need to consider who you're protecting. Your job is usually to either shield your team with deathball comps or create a distraction with dive comps. In both cases, you're the one soaking up most of the initial damage for your team. Your job is to make sure that your DPS can do their job. Shields are creating space for your team that they can use to engage and kill enemies. When you are done protecting, you may want to get back into the fight. You need to pay attention to keep the line of sight with the supports, so they are able to help you in the midst of the opposing team. For non-flanker DPS heroes, you want to stay behind your frontliner and make sure to either have a shield to protect you or to use the tank's body to shield you from harm. This way you can do your job, that is, doing damage, without the enemy being able to damage you freely. The most important thing is to always make sure that there is somebody beefier than you in the front line and use them for protection. If you wander off and don't see your tanks anymore, you're going to go down quickly in most cases. Of course, sometimes there are better positions than behind the tanks, but these are special cases. For flanker DPS, you need to make sure to periodically have line of sight with your supports. This means that you go in, do your worst, and get to a position where you can heal up quickly. You're not made for prolonged fights in between many enemies. Now that these concepts are clear, we can move on and see some good and bad examples of positioning, where the importance of keeping the line of sight can be seen clearly. So, it's important to make sure that you keep the line of sight with your target and break it for everyone else in the enemy team. It'll help you with your positioning if you start thinking like this. We are using a very simple line of sight model in the following example to help you understand the basics. Imagine all characters to have a line coming from their head and going towards infinity in the direction that they are facing. This is the line of sight for the given character. You want to make sure that while you're doing your job with your hero, for example trying to get a pick with Widowmaker or trying to put an orb of discord on the key target, that you think about these lines. They're more like cones in reality, but this model is a good starting point. Decide which teammate should be seeing you, which enemy you should be seeing, and which enemy you want to be hidden from. The optimal position is where you can see your target and only the target is able to see you and no one else. This scenario won't usually happen in a live game though, but this is what we're aiming for. So, using this knowledge, let's see some examples to make sure that you can use this newly learned insight in your games. The first example is King's Row, first point on attack. You're playing Widowmaker, and the others in your team are Zenyatta, Mercy, Pharah, Genji, and Winston. The enemy team has a single Ana for heals and running Torbjorn, Symmetra, Soldier, Reinhardt, and Zarya. When you engage, you want to get into a position where you can get a clear idea of the enemy team composition. Soldier, Torbjorn, and Ana are the ones that can harm you, and you want to eliminate the highest priority target, which is Ana in this case, the single healer. So you now need to think about where to position yourself with the grapple to preferably break the line of sight of the soldier and establish it with the Ana. You wait for the Winston to engage, grapple to the top of the building on the right, and get a clean shot of the Ana playing around the arc. By planning your engage like this, you can get into favorable positions and don't have to rely on random factors to help you win your games. Try to outsmart the enemy and hit them where it hurts the most. Let's see the same engage but from Winston's perspective. Winston is gaining intel, then decides to jump the soldier to keep him busy and allow the Pharah and Widowmaker to do damage as they like. However, Winston needs to consider how long he can stay on the soldier. If Ana and Zenyatta have a clear line of sight on him, he's going to be able to stay there longer and even dance a little around his shield. If the soldier is on the high ground, where it's hard to see the Winston for the attacker supports, he needs to be careful with the distraction, not to let the soldier come under the shield and get killed too quickly. Winston can also use the shield in this situation to break the line of sight of the enemy support on the soldier. This way the soldier won't be able to receive heals, and has to either risk the 1v1 with Winston or flee. Winston's team can use this to their advantage. Alright, so these were the examples that should make it clear why it is so important to keep line of sight on your mind when you're choosing a position to defend or a route to engage from. Feel free to join the OverwatchDojo Discord server if you have any questions regarding this topic or anything else Overwatch related. Click the card now or the link in the description. Okay, now we know the basics, but the concept of keeping and breaking the line of sight has an advanced usage as well. You can use certain abilities to create situations where the line of sight is broken between key targets and supports and abuse it to your advantage. The best example is against Winston, whose bread and butter is his shield. This shield is the best tool for breaking line of sight of the enemy team when used well. In the previous example, Winston could jump on the main DPS and shield around himself to deny healing from the enemy Ana and protect himself at the same time. If Winston can coordinate with flankers, they can use this to quickly go in, kill the target, and work their way through the enemy team. When you're using the concept of body blocking, standing between your protected target and the enemy to eat some of the damage for them, you are basically breaking the line of sight of the enemy to help your teammate. The tanks in Overwatch use this concept a lot to save teammates and play around enemies. You are dancing in front of the one you are protecting, making sure that they can sneak in those few extra shots without having to worry about getting killed quickly. This of course works the other way around too. You can stand between your target and their healers to make sure that they are not getting the necessary support to stay alive. This is risky, but usually doable if your healers help you. We hope that you found this topic interesting, and that you can use the knowledge learned here to improve your game. If you like what we're doing here, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to notifications by clicking that bell icon. We're waiting for you on our Discord server, and we'll see you guys in the next one.